All right, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Anthony Casa today. How are you, Anthony?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to being part of this. I'm really excited about what you're building.
I appreciate it. So you're one of those people who needs no introduction in our industry. But for those of the few people who don't know who you are, why don't you give us a little bit of your background on like how you got into the business, where you started, and then we'll of course touch on all the amazing things that you're doing today.
Yeah, so I got in the mortgage industry when I was 18 years old. So I dropped out of school when I was 13. So I last grade of school that I completed was the eighth grade. Was in the family restaurant business, thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Luckily, came across somebody that got me into the mortgage business. So, long story short, just to kind of like give everybody a little context on like my approach to everything, I essentially first week on the job, identified who the top salesperson was. And, once I identified that person at the time, this is 2003. So people are like, oh, that guy's making $80,000 a month or whatever. This is like, back in the peak of the subprime world. Essentially I was like, all right, like I spent my days just kind of walking past this guy's desk, learning what he's saying. And then at night, after everybody went home from 6 to midnight, I would sit there and work my leads and regurgitate what that person was saying. So I learned all, really teaching myself and by, being an observer. And over the course of what I would call like the first half of my career, which is like before the financial crisis, I was raised by wolves. So like, everything, everything that I'm not today is what was then which is like, not very transactional, very focused on the sale, very focused on making the most money. And as a result of that, obviously I think that the housing crisis, was what it was. It was created by greed and created by bad behavior. And on the other side of it, I learned my lesson. I learned, hey, listen, if you want to do this for a living, if you want to, have the, build a career in the mortgage industry, you got to be relationship focused. You got to be consumer centric. You got to be customer focused. So when I built my second phase of my career, at Garden State Home Loans, which turned into the number one brokerage in the country, the whole philosophy was leading by, relationships, leading by culture. If we said we were going to do something, we were going to do it. And that business was entirely built on that premise. It became the number one broker in the country in 2015. And, still to this day, it's one of the best places to get a mortgage in the state of New Jersey. It's great business. And I was very proud of that. But I did hit a point in that business where, I realized that I wasn't learning, I wasn't getting better. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't, undervalue is like we were crushing it. And I was the master of like, we became the number one broker. Me and Justin and our team, like we were making all kinds of money and it was great. And the business was running well. But at the end of the day, I didn't know how to take that business to plus 50 employees. Like, there was 50 team members doing $1.5 billion a year. I had no idea how to get it above that. And by the way, this is back in 2015 when the conforming loan limit was 417. It's not like today where it's doubled. So, fast forward, I made the decision to leave the business and really focus on learning how to become an executive that can scale a business. Through my relationship with Matt Ishbia, who, our company was the number one client of UWM. So I developed a great relationship with him. I really got to learn a lot from him. That was, when I exited, I started AIM, which is Association of Independent Mortgage Experts. It was Association for Loan Officers. And it was kind of to get loan officers to focus. Like I came out of nowhere. Nobody knew who I was. I never went to conferences. I wasn't on social media. So in order to get everybody's attention in 2016, when I started, what really was Braun to start with that turned into AIM, I had to be provocative. It was kind of like a Donald Trump type of type of approach where, you're being bigger than life, you're being provocative, and that was sort of the persona that was necessary to, get everybody gathered and get everybody supporting the movement. And that's what happened. Over 40,000 LOs joined, followed AIM and became supporters of AIM. Long story short, I always knew in my heart of hearts that, my goal was to build a scalable mortgage company on the other side of my experiences during that period of time. So one part is I focus on learning from the big lenders, and I directly interacted with, Matt and Willie Newman and all the leaders of these different companies. And I saw how I wanted to do it. I also saw how I didn't want to do it and just the way these companies were ran. But the other thing was, I started a company called Arrive, which is a technology company that like my vision was I never want to go back to Encompass or Calyx again. I want to be, I started a mortgage company. I want to have scalable technology. So, one of the great takeaways during that period of time was, I started Arrive. I found the entrepreneur, Harish Tejwani, that took it over and leads it. They built some amazing technology that we use today. And when I left AIM, I started building U Mortgage, which is a national mortgage company that, we're up to 500 team members in 2 years. And, we're on pace to do over $3 billion in volume this year.
Wow. I can relate with you with getting in the business young. I'm 27. I got started when I was 20. It was like my first real job out of high school. Before that, the only job that I had was baking bagels on the weekend. My very Long Island job. But yeah, so you started. It's funny because although I didn't grow up in the subprime era, I was on a team that was predominantly telemarketing. So I can understand the atmosphere you were trying to describe. It probably wasn't as bad as what you were, that time period. But I can relate with the kind of thinking to yourself, like, is there a better way to do this?
Yeah.
And that's something that I still till this day ask myself, whether it's, how we hire, our processes, how we market, our tech. Is there a better way to do this? And that's something that I think your company and you kind of embody. You always say get better every day, right? That's one of your principles, I would say. And I think every good entrepreneur has that. It's not like we are the type of people that is just going to accept, all right, this is good. We're, even if it's really, really good, we're constantly asking ourselves, how can we make it better? So I've always related with you in that regard. And I think it's because of the experiences and background that we have and how we started out, and also just never being satisfied. So, I mean, what are some things, like, speaking on that, if you can elaborate, like, what are some things right now that maybe you aren't satisfied with that you're trying to push U Mortgage forward? And we're of course going to dive deeper into what U Mortgage is and everything like that for everybody who doesn't know. But what are you guys like really, really pushing the envelope on right now?
Yeah, there's a couple things to be straight with you. I would tell you that, like, I'm not satisfied almost everything. So, like, I'm a single guy. I'm 37 years old. I wake up at 2:30 in the morning every day. I'm in the office by 3:15, and I work pretty much my entire life is working. So, like, the things that I spend my time on is really dialing in the client experience. And I look at client experience as our team member experience and our customer experience. And it's not about, like, how did you order the homeowners or something like that. It's really about how you make people feel.
Right.
And understanding, like, like, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get a loan officer, like, as any loan officer out there is, like, how you want to make your client feel. And when you've gone above and beyond for the client, how they interact with you and how they appreciate you and how they become an evangelist for you. And to me, it's like being able to create an environment where the receptionist understands that their goal is to create a raving fan in every person that walks through the building every day. Well, as the FedEx guy or a team member, like, you're the best receptionist ever. Same thing with our operations people and our lock desk people and all the different people in our businesses, getting them to understand that and having that approach. But, like, as and you've definitely learned at this point, is, like, there's people that live life with passion and purpose that really, like, kind of pour into their work. And then there's other people that, that's they're kind of going through the motions. So I've had to dial in my hiring processes and my entire, process for evaluating how do I promote people and how do I identify, like, who the people I want to, kind of, like, put my support behind to show this is our all-star team member.
Right.
And create evangelists within the organization. So people is everything. Like, that, all I can say is, like, you could build the best tech, you can have the best marketing, you can have all these different things, but if you want to build a scalable business, it all comes down to how do you make people feel, and how are you helping your people grow and get better every day.
What do you think it's possible? And I don't want to forget the Garden State Home Loans, AIM, but I think we're just naturally flowing here. Do you think it's possible to build an organization with every single person in it is a 10 out of 10?
It's impossible.
It's impossible, right?
Yeah, it's impossible. So I'll tell you, this is something that I had a conversation last week with somebody who's that runs a company with 10,000 team members, and I asked him, I was like, "Are you dealing with these struggles? Are you constantly having to recoach and coach?" And they were like, "Anthony, it's never going to stop." And he's like, "I got 10,000 people here," and he's like, "I got maybe 200 of the 10,000 that I would say truly embody the way that I want things done and the way that we would think is great." So like what you have to do is you have to have processes and procedures and, really clear, tight reporting and insights that help you understand, like, is it everything working the way it's supposed to work? So I'll give the example of Amazon. Like, Amazon just works. You don't have an experience with Amazon. Amazon, you order something, it shows up. It just works. You don't sit there and say like Amazon's amazing like that. You don't have an experience. It just works. So for me, it's like, how do I create an experience that 90% of the time it just works, and then 10% of the time when things go wrong, we have our people that care the most there, because when you have people there, when things go wrong, when you have people correct the things that went wrong, that care and apply, that level of care, you can actually turn an upset customer, an upset team member into an evangelist by showing them, hey, listen, we're really sorry about how this went wrong. This is how we're going to make it right. We're listening. We care about your feedback. Like when you go that extra mile, you can have a situation where your service wasn't great. You could turn it into an amazing experience for the client by caring. So you got to systematize these things. You got to be super intentional with every freaking detail, man. It's brutal.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I had to come to terms with very quickly is like, not everybody is me. And, I can definitely set standards within an organization and I can build those systems out. But at the same time, I'm not going to expect everybody to care as much as me or work as hard as me. But if you have a few people like that, it goes a very, very long way. So I think you described that very, very well. So let's take a step back and talk about, so Garden State Home Loans was based in New Jersey. Is that where you're from?
So I was originally from Queens, Astoria, New York. So,
All right.
I live in New York.
I live in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So, that's original. Like I was only there till I was 3 years old. And then I spent the rest of my life in South Jersey. So
I'm sorry to hear that.
Believe me, I feel the same way. But yeah, that was majority of my life. I'd been in Philadelphia the last 4 years.
Gotcha. So I got to ask you, and I don't know if anybody has before. I'm sure they have. Where's the best Philly cheesesteak?
Oh, it's definitely Angelo's.
Okay. All right. So there's a plug for Angelo's right there. I'll make sure to stop by. And now Garden State Home Loans was based in New Jersey. What made you want to, because you explained the story of, you got started as an LO or it wasn't LO then, but, a salesperson within a mortgage company, and you saw the wrong way to do things. So you went and started Garden State Home Loans. Am I correct?
Yeah. So Justin and Joseph and I worked together since I was 18 years old. And basically, when we got everything kicked off, we were of the mindset of like, hey, we're going to keep it small and we're just going to originate our own business and do our own thing. That didn't last too long. It was really quickly that the entrepreneurial side of me really, kind of, came alive. And same thing with him. He's a great entrepreneur. He's done amazing things. But, once we put our minds to it, the mindset was like, hey, we want to be number one in New Jersey. That's where our mind was at the time. And we became number one broker and then eventually, in the country. But, the business was just different, man. Like we ran that business, like every team member, they worked their butts off, man. Like I'm talking about like, we wouldn't hire another person until we got the last drop out of every team member. Like we were working 100 hours a week. If somebody left at 11 o'clock, I would be sitting there. They used to call it the car wash. They would have to walk by me and then they'd have to walk by my partner and it would be like, hey, you're leaving early? Was it part-time? It would be 11:30 at night. So we were brutal, but the realization that I had is like, I made all this money and I was busting my butt really good. And I realized like, that's not what I wanted to build, was just a company that was, generating the most, but not very fulfilling for its team members.
Right. So, and now what made you say, obviously you built a company with that at its core, you guys became number one in the whole entire country. What made you say, I'm done with this, and to start AIM?
Well, I think for one, it didn't happen that like kind of instantly. It was like, hey, I started Brawl, which was essentially like a brokers rallying against wholesale lenders, which was essentially a call to action for brokers to understand that there's some lenders that they do business with, that when you do a loan with them, they then have a call center that calls that borrower to refinance them in the future. So it was more of an awareness campaign. I didn't expect it to turn into as big of a thing as it did, which it turned into like kind of a huge movement. So, as this unfolded in a very short period of time, I kind of said, okay, all these people are looking to me for leadership. We started this grassroots movement. It's not an organization. It's just kind of like a movement of like, hey, this is a bad business practice. Well, after seeing the following and seeing how much people were looking for leadership in the broker channel is a bunch of very small businesses. Like they're all in silos. So, they didn't talk, they didn't interact. They're all kind of on their own, kind of island to a degree. So, Brawl got them all into a Facebook group. Everybody started to come together. And that's when I said, hey, listen, I'm going to give this a shot. And I'm going to start this. I'm going to start AIM. But I kind of said in the back of my mind, like, if I'm going to do this, I got to go all in. And I can't be the broker owner and also be doing this because, some people would be looking at me like, oh, is this guy trying to recruit my people? Right. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna leave, Garden State Home Loans. I'm gonna focus all of my energy on AIM, and I have no regrets.
And now you're obviously, one of the more, or were, and I'll get to that in a second, we're one of the more passionate people about the broker channel, and I'm sure you still are. So I don't want to misrepresent. But now at U Mortgage, you guys are mini correspondent, correct, or correspondent?
Yeah, we're non-delegated correspondents. So the truth of the matter is that we operate the same way as a broker for the most part. So we have a marketplace of lenders. So we have let's just call it 25, 30 lenders that we're signed up with, and at the end of the day, the difference between a broker and a non-delegated is we fund the loan in our name, so we have a warehouse line, so we don't have to disclose our compensation, which, to be honest with you, that is where brokers got the short end of the stick from a regulation standpoint, is like bankers don't have to disclose their comp. So that's one. Two, it allows us to keep the disclosures unified in one company's name. So it's in U Mortgage's name the whole time versus like our name plus the lender's name.
Right.
But really to be completely straight is like, there's no pickup when it comes to like, better pricing than the broker channel. It's really comes down to like, operational efficiency. It's like, we're going to close 500 transactions this month. Like me going to, our people trying to chase down 500 checks from all these closings would be a very big disaster nationwide. So having the warehouse line just, allows us to fund the loan, sell the loan, get paid, and have a concise, kind of accounts receivable process.
Gotcha. And now what makes you guys, well, first, before I even ask you that question, what the transition from AIM to now U Mortgage, if you can kind of elaborate on that and what sort of drove you to that decision?
Well, I bought the company, I bought the company Premier Processing, which was a nationwide contract processing company way before, like probably 2019. And I always, originally was planning on like making, I thought brokers needed contract processing because they do. Right. But after, I left AIM, I said, all right, I'm going to turn it into a mortgage platform and turn it into U Mortgage. I would say that, it took me a solid 6 months to get back truly in the mortgage mindset that like I need to be in. Like when I was at AIM, you're not in the minutia of day-to-day mortgages. So like while you're in the business, you're not working in the business. So like, right. You don't like, this game is what it is. Right. So for me, it took me a little while to adjust, but once, I got into it, I got back to, that, very relentless and fixated kind of focus on the business. And the truth of the matter was my vision for the business was, hey, listen, the broker channel is great, except you can't really be a broker and work with different lenders because there's no way to efficiently go from lender to lender, learn all the TPO portals. Like it's not scalable. Right. Most brokers only work with a couple lenders. At Garden State Home Loans, we work with, UWM got 90% of our business. So for me, it was like, hey, we're going to create a marketplace through the technology we've built with Arrive, and our LOs will pick the mortgage company based on who's the lowest rate and fee to the consumer, and our operations will fully own the back end. So like the LO doesn't know whether it's going to UWM, Flagstar, like they pick the lender, but user experience doesn't matter. They don't have to learn the TPO portal. It's like we normalize that. Right. We do it all with a very thin margin and make it, very competitive to be in our model. Right. And I think it's the new broker model for us is like we look at as we're creating a marketplace for LOs to be able to access lenders, not the broker channel where you really have to kind of, learn it all yourself and do it all yourself.
Right. I mean, you're describing the plight of all brokers, which is scaling. Yes. And it's coming from you, which means a lot because you scaled Garden State Home Loans. So you know better than anybody let's call them challenges with that. I've never been this model is better than other model kind of guy. I've always tried to develop systems, even within the teams that I've been a part of, where I operate as I like to operate, as long as I have the creative control that I need or like, I can build a good business in any model. But I completely can see where that would run into issues. Now, you mentioned margin. Obviously, right now, volume's down compared to the record highs that we were hitting. How do you kind of limit cost but still operate on a thin margin? Like, what's your philosophy behind that? Obviously creating systems, but I don't want to answer the question for you. I'd rather hear from you what your philosophy is on that.
Yeah. So the one thing that we built at AIM that was the thing that stuck with me was community. So we had a Facebook group with 15,000 LOs in it, and that really became the most influential thing that we had is, anytime an LO has a question, they go in the Brokers Are Better, Facebook group, and they, scenario question, what lender to sign up with, like they had 14,000 of their peers sharing their ideas and their experiences. So I started to see that. I was like, man, like these are all the questions we used to ask each other on the sales floor at Garden State Home Loans.
Right.
So when I built this business, I went into it and said, hey, I got to build a community because that's going to replace middle management. That's going to replace everybody between the LO and, the CEO. So our community is really the strongest part of our whole entire workflow. Is like, we have an underwriting scenario desk. We have, a marketing desk. We have like all these things, but it's like Facebook for a company internally. It's called Workplace. And that's where we host our weekly sales meetings and our daily sales huddles. But it feels like we're all together, even though we're all across the country. Gotcha. So community was the first thing in keeping our costs down. That normalizes everything in the middle. But the other part of it was really understanding that you have to control operations. Like, this whole idea, like, hey, each branch has their own processors. This, everybody's got their own support people. Like, that's not realistic. Like anything that's customizable is not scalable. Right. Like, things that are scalable are predictable. Amazon's not sitting there like, oh yeah, just bring your own, delivery guy to work today. Like that's not the way they work. It's like, it's a logistics company. So to me, controlling that was really, really important, which was hard because getting LOs to change behavior. Right. They're used to having their own processors hard. But luckily, the housing industry has been in struggle. So like people are forced to, like, hey, listen, like this Casa guy's willing to do it for this margin and they'll process my loans. Let me give them a shot and see how they do. And the thing that people have found out is I am a process person. So like process and operations is really my thing. Right. And we do it really, really well.
And now, would you agree that some LOs need more support than others? How do you handle that? Because I know from our organization, which is we have 30 something salespeople. There's a few on there that obviously 20% do most of the business, but that's always the case. But aside from production, as far as support required, there's a good group of them that require a lot more support than others. Maybe it's because of the book of business that they have, or it's just that's not their strong suit. So how do you go about supporting those LOs?
So there's a couple of ways. Like to me, like and I hate to use this because it's just the way we do things here. Is like coaching is really big. Like you watch the football games on Sunday. What do you see? When the players are coming off the field, what do you see? You see the coaches coaching them, yelling at them, talking to them. Like in business, it's not normal to do that. It's like business, it's like, oh, the guy just did a shitty application and I'm just going to pat him on the ass and say, attaboy. Like here, we're coaching them. So like coaching's a really big part of it. The other thing that we do is like we pair people that have weaknesses with people that have strengths in the areas they have weaknesses. So, we might have somebody that's like sitting there and really struggling with taking, like, they're great rainmaker, but they're horrible at the loan application structuring. So, I'll sit there and I'll identify somebody that's a great at structuring, but not a rainmaker. And I'll sit there and be like, hey, why don't you guys build a team together and you stick to going out and getting loans, you stick to structuring and closing them, and you work with our operations team. So, to me, the juice has to be worth the squeeze in order to do that. I mean, the volume has to be there to make up for those inefficiencies.
Right.
But the other thing that you have to look at is, like, at the end of the day, if you're providing coaching and you're identifying people that care, because like that's the number one thing is, making sure you're aligning with people that give a crap. Usually the behavior will correct. It's when you enable the behavior that it becomes a habit, which becomes, who they are.
Harder to correct.
100%.
Yeah. Because I feel like what every owner is trying to figure out, among a bunch of other things, is how much support do we give our LOs, whether it's marketing, operations, coaching and development, compared to how much margin we can operate on and where that balance makes sense, right? Because if you give an LO every single thing they need, it becomes more expensive. And it's like this, then you have a manager that has a manager that has a manager, like you were discussing before, or it's just, we're paying for every piece of marketing material or whatever it is. So I think what you're describing is trying to figure out that balance, but also put in place systems where it's just more efficient.
Yeah, I think the reality of the situation is we view ourselves as Peloton. Is like, we got the best instructors, we got the best process, we got the competitive community. But at the end of the day, you still got to get on the bike every day if you want to be in better shape. Right. So it's like, I can have the best marketing, I have the best operations, I can have the best coaching, I can have all our processor playbook and our partnership playbook and all these things. But at the end of the day, if only 20% are using them, only 20% are going to get the benefit. Right. So for me, this goes back to that internal. You asked me earlier, like, hey, where's the area that you're like obsessively, focused on? It's creating internal communities. And one of the mistakes companies make is they try to sit there and say, hey, Johnny, who closes 40 loans a month, we want to prop him out here in front of everybody to show him, like, hey, Johnny's the best. Well, guess what? For people that are closing 20 to 30, they're going to look at Johnny and be like, yeah, I'm going to get him one day. For everybody below that, they're looking at like, I can never achieve that. And they just ignore Johnny. So like, to me, it's creating the internal communities where you say, hey, listen, the guy that's closing 5 loans a month, he's the inspiration, or she's the inspiration for the person that's closing 2 to 3 loans a month.
Right.
So if I'm propping that person up, or if that person's being positioned as like, hey, they're using marketing, you're using these things, now all of a sudden the people that might normally not follow like what you're trying to drive adoption on will sit there and be like, oh, well, if they're doing it, I'm on the same level. I could achieve that. Like, let me use the marketing. Let me use the CRM. Let me use those things. So
right.
There's really, it's getting into the weeds and understanding, like, you got a lot of different personas within your organization, and it's never going to be one size fits all.
I agree. And now you mentioned people and pairing them up and building communities. How do you find talent? What's your philosophy on that, and maybe some principles on how to figure out, like, is this person a good fit for our organization, whether it's operations or sales? And I know that's like a multifaceted question, but go ahead, please.
On the sales side of things, I would say this is, we attract talent. So I'm a big believer in, like, hey, I'm going to lead in a very unique way. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to show people this is the way we do things. And in the industry, I always say, it's like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Is like, there's not a lot of impressive people in the mortgage business. There's a lot of people that make a lot of money. There's not a lot of people I would sit here and be like, oh, I'm impressed by that person, regardless of how much money they've made. So to me, it's like, you got to attract the talent and you got to attract the people. And usually people are attracted to what they want or what they don't have. So, hey, I want leadership. I want direction. I want, passion. They're going to be attracted to that. So that's on the loan officer side of the house, which we've done really, really well. On the non-loan officer side of the house, that's, something where it's definitely a formula that you have to focus on. And it's more about understanding like filling the funnel and having the proper filtering mechanism to get to the right person. Because like, to be honest with you, what we've learned is like, to get the best processor, we got to filter from like 100 down to 1. And like the resume really doesn't matter. It's the attributes and the way they think about things, and the way they, you know, think about urgency and responsiveness. And there's just so much there. So finding the non-LOs is actually the harder part for us.
Yeah, I think because the salespeople are coming to you versus the other way, you got to filter all of these different, and I guess right now is a decent time for that because everybody's displaced. But then you have to kind of ask yourself, like, why were you displaced? You know, were you the bottom 80%? And that may sound mean, but as somebody who's hiring somebody, that's a natural thing that's going to come across your mind. So, speaking of like what's going on right now, what do you think the mortgage industry is going through at like as of today? This is, you know, for everybody listening, February 7th of 2023. So we're still in Q1. What do you see are some problems, and where do you see those problems going?
I think right now this is a snapshot in time, and that we're part of a cycle. And I've been doing this. This is my 20th year in the mortgage business, and regardless of what the catalyst is for the cycle, that doesn't matter. Inflation, financial crisis, like there's all these different catalysts that have come up over the years that, you know, cause these cycles. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. It's all about how you react to it. And I started the company in, you know, essentially January of 2021. So, you know, here we are, January 2020. No, 2021. Yeah, 2 years. So, you know, we've gone from no team members to 500. We've gone from no business to 3 billion. We added 100 team members in the last 30 days. And everybody in the industry would tell you, like, this is the worst. You got to cut to the bone. You got to get it, you know, you got to get lean, and now's not the time to grow. It's, you know, batten down the hatchets. In my mindset, it's like, no, this is the best time to grow. Right now, this is where everybody else is. What happens when you let go of people? You create fear. When your team members are seeing you fire people, you think they're sitting there like, oh, this is a growth place. Like, no, they're sitting there saying, like, am I going to have a job on Monday?
Right.
So create fear. So when you have the ability to sit there and understand, like, now's the time you lose money. Now's the time you invest in your business and you build your team. And guess what? When things are good, people don't switch companies. When things are good, people have a full pipeline. They're too busy making money. But now's the time to take advantage of it. So, like, I just think this is a normal cycle. We're a year into it. I think if you look back at previous cycles, the general, you know, expectation is somewhere between 24 and 27 months that these go. And with that said, we're probably looking at, you know, Q2 of next year before we see, you know, rates start to come down and the housing markets start to recover. But, you know, to me, from a behavioral standpoint, now's the time to buy a house. Now's the time to, you know, go out there and take advantage of the fact that there isn't, you know, 50 buyers for every home.
Yeah, I was in my limited experience, you know, I've been in the business almost 8 years, and those 8 years have been interesting. I didn't see the complete collapse like you know, guys like you have experienced, but I did experience here in New York specifically the real estate industry being completely shut down and deemed non-essential. And I remember being scared. I remember because I was a purchase heavy guy. It's not like I was relying on refis. And for about 2-3 months, you weren't allowed to show houses as a realtor. And I remember saying to myself, like, what am I going to do? And I stayed in that mindset for 2-3 weeks. And I sulked and I, you know, got on the pity pot and, you know, this is BS. But there was a moment in time where I like literally said to myself, this is not helping. Like, this mindset is not helping you, right? So I need to do the complete opposite, even if I see no results. And I lowered my expectations as far as results go and just cranked up my drive to just take action regardless. And I made a series, and this is how I remember it, called Produce or Plateau. And in that moment in time, I had the decision to produce or plateau. And I released like a few different videos on different ways you can grow your business remotely, on lockdown, and I think that was a turning point for me because it was a moment in time where I needed to make a decision to take action regardless of the things outside of myself. And I think right now is the same time. It's different, but it's the same time. I am not going to just sit back and wait for loans to fall in my lap when there's less loans to go around. I have to get up, make the phone ring, and not wait for it to ring. And that's sort of the stuff and the messages that we're communicating to the team is like, now's the time to not only invest, like we're investing, like you said, but work. So speak to that person, like that LO right now, that's in that mindset, like, or explain like, how are you helping your organization get over? Cause we're not alone in this, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to, you ask an LO in your market, how's business? They're like, oh, it's booming. But they speak to an LO across the country and they're like, I'm struggling. It's slow, whatever it is. So let's kind of pull the curtain back and like, what would you say to that LO that's struggling right now and is scared?
I would say two things. I would say, number one, you are the leader of your life. Okay. And like this just goes down to like your realtors, your children, everything in your life. You're scared. I get it. You have to understand that nobody's coming to save your ass. Okay. So the decision that I make every single day is like, believe me when I tell you, sometimes I don't feel like coming to work. I don't feel like putting a suit on. I don't feel like shaving. Like those are emotions I have almost every freaking day. But at the same time, it's like, I know that I have 500 people betting on me. And I know that if I'm not there to give them the feedback, the coaching, the leadership, the guidance, that it's not going to be any better in a week without me there. Right. So like, when I think about my realtors, if I'm an LO, if I'm sitting there thinking about my realtors, I'm sitting at my market, I'm saying like, okay, there's certain people that because of the length of their relationships and the strength of the relationships, they're off limits. Okay, fine. But how many people are sitting there suffocating their clients? And like, when I say suffocating, it's like, you know me because I'm everywhere. Like the only reason you know me, we've never met before, is you've seen me on social.
Right.
You see me on TikTok, you see me on all these areas. And my whole thing is like, I'm going to be top of mind no matter what. When you decide that you're not happy with your company, you're going to be thinking about me. And to me, it's the same thing with realtors. It's like, connect with them and then suffocate them. Let them know, hey, listen, I don't want to do a coffee date. I'm in the business of winning and dominating. If you want to do that too, let's do it together and let's start doing business together. But that's the same conversation I have with LOs. It's like, hey, if you want to come to your mortgage, great. I'm not going to sit here and have 9 hours of conversations with you before you come here. I'm too busy winning. So if you want to come and be in an environment where you're going to win, come do it, with me here. But like, you got to have that confidence. So to me, I think as an LO, it's like, whatever it takes for you to overcome your fear or whatever it takes for you to bet on yourself, it's like, are you going to go out of business in the next 3 months? Okay, great. If the answer is no, then get your ass out of bed and do what you need to do to win every day, because nothing else matters. If you think you're going to go out of business next time, three months, then you got bigger problems. But if you're sure, like, hey, it's not make or break for me, I'm fine, I got money in the bank, things are fine, then go lead by example, because now's the time. If you're leading and you're loud and you're vocal, every realtor that you wanted to get their attention a year ago, they're paying attention right now. Believe me when I tell you, they're all paying attention.
They're not that you want to take them on a coffee date, but they're looking for a free cup of coffee right now.
Yes, exactly.
And now when I think you mortgage, and this is to give you credit, when I think of you mortgage, I think of like culture, and it's because I think it's because you're leading from the front. You have that mindset, you have the confidence. But I wanted to ask you selfishly, how do you develop a culture within an organization? It's not I know it's not the ping pong table and the little arcade game and all that stuff. So I want your take on this, being that I think you're an expert in it.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. One of the things I talk to all of our senior leaders about is, and they would all regurgitate the same thing, is I tell them, like, there's a U mortgage culture, but within your division, you have to build your own culture where those team members would run through a wall for you. And it all starts with understanding that, like, you got to have their back. They got to believe that you believe in them more than they believe in themselves. So it all starts with like that understanding. You can't be some high level leader. You got to be in the weeds. You got to show them you care. When things go wrong, you got to swoop in and show them how to solve problems. You got to be in a situation where if you have this scarcity mindset, like if I sat here and was like, oh my God, I'm so scared of losing LO, or I'm so scared to lose this person, it's like, no, I'm not scared. I have 100% confidence they're not going anywhere because I've earned the relationship. I've worked very hard for it. But at the end of the day, if they left, I'd celebrate them. So to me, it starts with understanding that like your number one goal as a leader is to replace yourself. If you build a culture where you are championing your team members, where their wins are truly your wins, where you're never looking to take credit for what they're doing, where they're coaching each other and they're helping each other, and there's trust and there's community within your division, you've got something special. But the one big mistake I see leaders make is they have a double standard, meaning this is one of the things I see, and you know this better than anybody in the mortgage business. It's like, hey, the salesperson just called and, they want this. Well, the processor turns to the operations leader and says, this is, they're an asshole. They make all the money, blah, blah, blah. And an operations leader, they have a choice right there. The choice is, number one is, first of all, if they said it to you, that means you're accepting of it and you've created an environment where that's okay. Number two, your choice is say, hey, no, they're not. Listen, they're focused on serving the client. So are we. We got to do what we got to do to own the moment and support our customer. Remember, somebody's buying a home here. This isn't about Jimmy, the loan officer. This is about Susie, the home buyer. So like you got to coach in the moment and correct that behavior every single time. And the more you condition your people to understand what is acceptable and not acceptable, the more you condition the culture that you're living within. But a lot of people, like you said a couple minutes ago, you're like, you don't want to be mean. No. You have to understand, either you set those expectations, you hold the line, or that becomes your culture.
Right. And I, one of our core principles is empathy. Right. So, and I always heard Gary Vee talk about empathy. I really didn't even understand it. It went like way over my head, but, because of multiple experiences within my business, within our team, I was like, that is one of the most important things for us to have, because the loan officer should have empathy for the processor. The processor should have empathy for the loan officer. We should all have empathy for the customer. So when the customer is complaining that it's a lot of paperwork, we don't get mad at that. We understand it. When the processor is complaining that, the LO didn't do a proper 1003, we understand it. We understand that the loan officer's got a ton of things going on, but the loan officer also understands that like that's a very, very important piece to making the processor's life, easier. So I think enforcing that is something that you're clearly doing very well. Because then what you're saying is that trickles through the organization, that becomes the fabric. Which is an interesting way to think about it.
It is, and I think really like empathy is the outcome. Like at the end of the day, you've created an environment where people are empathetic, but the truth is like it all comes down to understanding how experiences is what drives behavior. So like when somebody has certainty, whether it's a home buyer or a loan officer, when they have certainty about the process or an outcome, they are going to be confident. They're going to be supportive. They're going to be very like engaged and they feel part of it. When they're uncertain, when they're like, wait, nobody's responded to my email. Like, are they working on getting this loan clear to close? Right. Do they understand it has to close? When there's uncertainty is when you create distrust, when you create like sort of like this chaos. So for me, it like everything starts with, the experiences that you're facilitating within your business, and understand how they play into the ability for people to become empathetic of one another. It all starts with trust.
I like that. So when you boil it down, I got it. That makes a lot of sense. Well, Anthony, I mean, again, you're somebody, like you mentioned before, there's a lot of people who make a lot of money in this business, but there's few that you respect. I completely agree. And I will say that you're a person that I do respect. So I appreciate your time. And I think everybody got a lot out of listening to this today. And I want to ask you one question, and we'll close with this. And this is something that I'm trying to ask everybody. And that is, I know for me, this business has changed my life. Coming from the background that I came from, it's not like I had, success in my future if you looked at it outside looking in, and this business has given me that and much more. So I wanted to ask you before we leave, and wrap up, what do you love about this business?
I love that I love how challenging it is. I love that the opportunity is that you can, if you aspire to be the number one LO in the country, you can become the number one LO in the country, not in 20 years, but in 3 years. If you aspire to become the number one mortgage company, you can do that in 3 years. Like, you can accomplish anything you want to accomplish, and all you have to do is apply yourself. Nothing else matters. So like, I just love the fact that there's that opportunity for growth and opportunity to be successful. And I cherish, bringing more people into the business and being able to share that opportunity with more people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Anthony. And that wraps up this episode of the Mortgage Pro Podcast. Cool.
Awesome job, man. Thank you very much. Hey, real quick, I want to take a screenshot so I can send it to. Oh wait, that's not the right one. I'm like an old man with technology. It's so sad. So let's go. 1, 2, 3. Let's go. All right, man. You're the man. I appreciate you. Have a great day. Let me know if you need anything.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. I'll take it easy.
Bye-bye.